Hi, I'm back. Night number 2 of Chanukah. Talking about affection tonight. For those of you who are new, my name is Rifki. I am a parent, educator, and coach. And that means that I love to support parents in bringing more compassion, kindness, joy into their parenting experience. And specifically the joy piece, because really I believe that parenting was meant to be joyful. And the fact that it isn't is something that we can work through, and we can reclaim the joy in our parenting. So today I am going to talk about affection and about how we can show that for our children, especially for those of us who may be a struggle, may not come naturally. Obviously, when we talk about affection, the first thing we're thinking about is like hugs and kisses and cuddles at bedtime. And of course, for whenever we can do that, it just goes into their being, into their body and their identity, that they know that they're loved in a very deep way, in a much deeper way than if we're telling them, I love you, and that's just in the mind. Everything that our children experience physically goes in much deeper. And just like we hear so much about how the body keeps the score in terms of trauma, in terms of the terrible things that happen, unfortunately. So obviously that also applies to the good stuff. So when good things are happening, safe things are happening, validation and affirmation and connection, those are also being stored in the body as powerful memories and helping develop our children's identity in a really healthy way. But I'm here to bring some other points out about affection. And I want to expand our definition of it. And I want to show us how we can bring more affection into our relationship with our children, even if it's something that we're not comfortable with, how we can bring it in little tiny baby steps and right where we are at. And we can work with who we are and our background and be able to bring the affection with meeting ourselves where we're at too, as the parents. So first of all, consider that we can find affection. Our children can see affection just in our eyes. The way that we look at them, the way that we notice them if they walk in the room, when they come in the door and our eyes turn to face them and our eyes are showing warmth and kindness, and we're showing that I'm so happy that you're here. I'm excited that you're here. When our eyes are showing that, that's a powerful way of communicating affection. And our smile, when we smile at our children, that also communicates affection in a really powerful way. It's just something that viscerally our children are absorbing, that my mother smiles at me, and this is all happening subconsciously. My mother smiles at me, and that means that she likes to see me. That's such a powerful thing for our children to know. My mother likes to see me. My mother likes to be in interaction with me. And I'm talking, of course, like smiling at random times, not only when our children are, so to speak, behaving well. So let's not underestimate the simple smile. And here's something else to bring out, that I don't want you to underestimate every little physical interaction that is available to you, and to not to realize how powerful it can be. So, for example, when we walk by our child and we might just reach out and rub their shoulder, just pat their shoulder as we walk by them. Or we're bringing them food, we're bringing them something to eat, and instead of just plunking it down in front of them, we like lean over and give us a shoulder squeeze, and so they're feeling that presence, and that is affection. And the reason I'm sharing all of these smaller little nuances of affection is because I know that for many people who didn't experience much affection in their childhood, to throw yourself into hugs and kisses and bedtime cuddles is very, very difficult and very, very hard. And it doesn't mean that we can't try. Of course, we can try to do those things too. But I think it can be just so validating, and it could feel so much more within our reach if we know of other ways that we can be affectionate to our children that are smaller steps for us. And so these are some examples. So do not underestimate that when you walk by your child and you just pat their shoulder, or that when you're bringing them their plate of dinner and you give them a little shoulder squeeze, don't underestimate how powerful that is. It all goes into it's kind of like, I like to give the metaphor of a pot of soup. You know, when you're sprinkling in spices, salt, pepper, garlic, whatever it is that you're putting in, you don't see them. They disappear into the soup, but you know it's adding so much good flavor. So these little things that we do when you walk by, and the little touches and the little physical connections that we can make, they're like the spices. They seem like nothing. They seem to disappear into nothingness, but they are adding so much flavor and so much goodness into our child's heart, into their body, into their identity. And another thing to point out is that consider affection as proximity. And what I mean by that is that when we walk into the living room and we have the choice to sit on one couch, but our child is reading a book on the other couch, and we can choose to sit down next to the child that's sitting on the other couch. That in itself is a form of affection. When we choose to sit near them, when we choose to be near them, that's a tremendous form of affection. So consider proximity as a way of showing affection. And now this is like a good spot to talk about how it is still important, no matter what we're doing, any form of physical affection, to be cognizant and aware of our child's cues. We want to be noticing if there is any sort of resistance to anything that we are offering them, any physical affection we are offering them. So if we're sitting down next to our child on the couch and they're kind of like displaying, like they move over a little bit because maybe it's not a good time. And we can say that. We say, hey, I see that maybe you want a little space. Is that, would you like that? And of course, anytime, giving children any form of physical affection, really listening to their body's cues. If we're reaching over for a hug and the kid is like pushing away or resistant, let it go. Step away and give them their space, because their body autonomy is so incredibly important. It's just as important as the affection that we give them. And so I just feel like that's an important thing to mention here, is just to keep an eye out and notice if there's any form of resistance showing up when we're interacting with our child in this way. Other things that we can do that are, again, subtle ways of offering that physical affection, but in a smaller way. Let's say we have a child who's scared to go to sleep at night, and we can offer them, let's say, our pillow. There's something about that, like, oh, it's mommy's pillow. Or even if it's allowing them to sleep if this works for you, allowing them to sleep in your bed until you're ready to go to sleep, or if you're comfortable having them sleeping in your bed. Those are all forms of physical affection that it just all goes into that pot. It all goes in and it all builds them and gives them security and connection and safety. Another thing that's so, so sweet, when, your children they go to sleep 7, 8, 9 o'clock, whatever time it is. And then when you're going to sleep later at night, and only do this if it's not going to wake your kids up. And also you can check with them ahead of time. You can ask them, hey, do you mind if I do this, that before I go to sleep, I come around and I just tuck you in again and give you a little hug, and as long as it doesn't wake you, do you mind if I do that? Checking it with them before, for the sake of practicing consent and not, interacting with their body in a way that they wouldn't have wanted. And then, and as long as it doesn't wake them up and it doesn't bring more chaos into your evening, That's a beautiful, beautiful way to give our kids extra physical affection. And in short, basically, again, if it's hard to give physical affection, if it's something you didn't have when you were young, allow yourself to start small. Do the things that feel safe to you. Push your limits if it doesn't feel too threatening. Don't push yourself too much. It doesn't benefit your children if you're pushing yourself too much. And we'll talk about that. And I'm not sure which night I'm going to talk about authenticity, but we're going to talk about that, and it applies to what we're talking about here. That's one of the other topics that I am planning to talk about one of these nights of Chanukah. And most of all, I invite you to trust that you are the right parent for your child. And what I mean by that is that even if in this moment you do not know how to be as physically affectionate as you would like to be to your children, the fact that you're listening to this means that you are growing and you want to bring more of that into your life. And that means that you will grow and you will find more spaces and little things that start to become second nature. And as that becomes second nature, then you're able to take another step. And gradually, things that you never thought you could do become totally natural for you. So trusting that your process of growing growing as a parent is precisely what your child needs. And so even though sometimes we feel such an anxiety, like, oh, I wish I was better, it takes us away from growing. It takes us away from where we want to be. So just really resting in trust that you are growing and your process is perfect for what your child needs. And it's going to get easier. It's not a question. And I see here, Chai Bracha, I asked my kids if I can kiss them when they're asleep, and they all think it's so sweet. So yeah, exactly. They usually love it. And if they don't, we can respect that. There are some kids who are just less into physical touch, or maybe they have sensory, they have certain discomfort with touch, and we can respect them. We can find other ways to make that connection. Oh, and another thing to point out is that sometimes if we have older children, if you are someone who has older children and you're just coming to this place now, and if you start showing up with all this physical affection, that's going to really throw them off, especially if it's something that is new for your family. And that's why another scenario where it would be helpful to start small, really, really small, and to trust that those little small bits of connection, especially for the older children, really does make a difference. When you're walking by and you pat them on their shoulder, or you lean in for a second when you bring them their food and you just give that squeeze, that doesn't go unnoticed, and it's not for naught. It really makes a difference. And trust that where you're at is the right place for everyone. And I hope this was helpful. Feel free to share in the comments. Happy Chanukah.